Welcome to another edition of Bible Time. I'm glad you were able to join us today. We're following along with the Believers Fellowship Daily Bible Reading. I'm Pastor Bruce, and we're providing a little commentary that we call Bible Time. And today we come to 1 Chronicles chapters 21 and 22. And there's something I'm trying to impress upon you as we go through Chronicles, something that's very important, a very important principle of Bible interpretation. A very important principle for you and me to really understand what's going on in Chronicles and to put it together with the other historical books in the Old Testament. And it is this: you have to understand the audience that is being addressed. The book of Samuel was written before the people were taken into exile. In fact, it was leading up to the time when David was the king of Israel. And then First Kings and Second Kings talk about the history of Israel, the northern kingdom, Judah, the southern kingdom, and how they wound up going into exile. Those were written through the Jewish people who were in exile, explaining to them how they got to where they are, and how, you remember, the main theme was rejection. They had rejected God, God had rejected them, and that's how they got to where they are. Well, now Chronicles is written to the people who are coming back to Jerusalem from exile, so it's written quite a bit later. And the writer of Chronicles, probably Ezra, figures that the people know most of the history from Samuel and Kings, and so he's not interested in giving them all the history. He's pointing out certain things, and he's writing what he's writing. He's being very intentionally positive in his writing, because he's wanting to encourage these people who've come back to their decimated land and to encourage them to rebuild the land, to rebuild the temple. And these were tough times, hard times, and he's trying to encourage them. So, for example, in between chapter 20 and 21 here of Chronicles, there's a period of about 20 years, which is a time of turmoil in the family of David, as the uprising of Absalom and all of that. Well, the chronicler isn't interested in repeating all that. You've read all of that. That's not his point in writing all of this. He's highlighting the positive. Well, you say, well, then why does he start off with chapter 21 with Satan enticing David to number the people and to commit this great sin against them? That's a good question. And there's an answer for that. But let me just point out one thing here along the way. I don't want you to miss this, because when David recognizes what he's done, verse 8 provides us with a great example of what real confession looks like. He says there in verse 8, David said to God, I have sinned greatly in that I have done this thing, but now please take away the iniquity of your servant, for I have acted very foolishly. That's a complete confession. That's owning up. That's taking responsibility. That's an example of real confession. But that's not so much the point of why this is here. The point of why this is here, why give this negative thing, why I talk about this great sin in the life of David, is because the destruction that comes as the consequence, the angel of the Lord that comes, and 70,000 Israelites lose their life as a result. The destruction stops at the place where Israel is going to wind up making atonement for their sins, the place where the temple is going to be built. And that's the point of the author, to get us to the point where we understand, hey, there was a temple built right here, and this is how it got to be right there, and this is a significant thing. This is significant to the people who have come back to the land, who now have the job of building the next temple in the very same location. And it's significant, too, that we're told that David bought that spot. He bought that threshing floor, and that's the place where the temple was going to be constructed. So it belonged to David, and it belonged to his descendants forever. That's another significant thing that's being pointed out here, because the people who are come back there, who are building the temple, who are worshiping God, and this temple, by the way, is the symbol of the presence of God with them. And the descendants of David, there's a coming Messiah. They know that the Messiah hasn't come yet, but they are believing that he's coming. He's a descendant of David. All of this is tying together, and it's meant to produce within them a zeal for the Lord and a zeal for for building the temple, because now they understand the history, they understand the importance, they're reminded of the significance of it, and even the significance of the very place where they're building it. This has great significance to them. It's meant to stir them up to finish the work that they have been given to do. And that's the same for us as well. This is written for our example, for our instruction, that we should be faithful and responsible to do all that the Lord has given us, remembering all that he's done, remembering all of his faithfulness that's being demonstrated here through the book of Chronicles. And just a couple of things to close with, just a couple of things for you to take note of. I mean, David gives a great charge to his son Solomon regarding the building of this temple. And he says right at the very end, and here's a word for you and me, right at the end of verse 13, chapter 22, he says, "Be strong and courageous. Fear not. Do not be dismayed." Yeah, do what the Lord has called you to do. Be faithful, be courageous. That's a word for us today, to be zealous for the Lord, even in a situation where things are going in the opposite direction. We don't need to be fearful. We just need to be courageous for the Lord. And then he says in verse 19 of chapter 22, "Now set your mind and heart to seek the Lord your God." That's the same thing that would be said to us today. And we're remembering God's faithfulness to David, faithfulness to Israel, faithfulness to his promises, faithful that Christ came and died for our sin, faithful that Christ rose again from the dead just as the scriptures said he would, and he is going to be faithful to come back again. Let's be zealous for the Lord and serve him with all of our heart today. What a great reminder this is for you and me that comes out of the book of Chronicles. I'm so glad we're getting to study the Bible together, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow when we can have more Bible time.